someone who's there.
How much money have you ever gotten from Jerry Falwell?
$0.
How about Pat Robertson?
0.
Are you a minister?
No.
Are you a priest?
No.
Pastor?
No.
Youth pastor?
Oh, I did teach Sunday school once.
Has this all been resolved? I mean, aren't we all Darwinists now? Except for a few cranks like you?
Well, it's a funny thing that questions that aren't properly answered don't go away. This question is loaded with all kinds of political baggage, but one-on-one at a scientific meeting after the third or fourth beer, my experience has been that many evolutionary biologists will say, yeah, this theory's got a lot of problems.
So you mean to tell me that there really is a debate among scientists about whether or not evolution occurred?
Well, evolution is a kind of funny word. It depends on how one defines it. If it means simply change over time, even the most rock-ribbed fundamentalist knows that the history of the Earth has changed, that there's been change over time. If you define evolution precisely, though, to mean the common descent of all life on Earth from a single ancestor via undirected mutation and natural selection, that's textbook definition of neo-Darwinism. Biologists of the first rank have real questions.
But the modern theory of intelligent design is just microwaved creationism.
I don't think that's the case. Creationism, properly understood, begins with the Bible and says, how can I fit the Bible into the data of science? Intelligent design doesn't do that. Intelligent design is the study of patterns in nature that are best explained as a result of intelligence.
So intelligent designers believe that God is the designer?
Not necessarily. Intelligent design is a minimal commitment scientifically to the possibility of detecting intelligent causation.
Dr. Nelson didn't sound like a crazy person, but I still suspected ID was nothing but reheated creationism. My next stop didn't seem like it was going to alleviate those fears.
I didn't crawl out of the ocean, I didn't come from no monkey. Science tends to forget evolution's just a theory. They present it in the textbooks and on animal TV. Like it's fact, but tell me, were you there? 12 million BC.
Evolution is, from an intelligent design perspective, is perfectly acceptable if the sense is that how did the design get implemented? The issue is there real design there, and are these material mechanisms like natural selection, are these adequate to account for everything we see in biology? And our argument is no, it's not.
But Darwin produced all this evidence from his travels and his studies at the Galapagos that evolution explained things.
If you look at the history of science, people often have a good idea and then they decide just to run with it. And they say, we're going to apply this everywhere. And so Darwin takes his idea of natural selection and says, I'm going to explain all of life with it. I mean, physics used to be Newtonian physics. Newton was physics. And then we got to look to Einstein, general relativity. It's not, Newton isn't enough. Well, I think likewise what we're finding with Darwin is that he had some valid insights, but it's not the whole picture.
Okay, Darwinism may not be the complete picture, but what made these guys think they had the missing pieces? I put this question to Dr. Stephen Meyer, author of the paper that originally got Dr. Sternberg in so much trouble.
It's hard to believe that this little town is the headquarters of giant Microsoft, which enabled Mr. Gates to become fantastically rich. Maybe that's what Steve Meyer's doing. Maybe this is somehow going to make him fantastically rich. We'll pin him down like a butterfly on a butterfly board. Butterfly on a killing board. Coffee shop straight ahead.
Newton is buried in the geniuses corner at Westminster Abbey, right?
That's correct, yeah. Darwin is also buried in Westminster Abbey.
Right, and yeah. So is Darwin. Right near each other, right? And you're here in Redmond in a little building without a sign. Right? And you're obviously an incredibly smart guy, but how dare you challenge someone who's buried in the geniuses corner next to Newton at Westminster Abbey?
Well, it may seem a little cheeky, but it's what scientists are supposed to do. When I was in Cambridge, one of my supervisors often advised us to beware the sound of one hand clapping. which was a way of saying if there's an argument on one side, there's bound to be an argument on the other. And what I found in studying the structure of the argument in The Origin of Species is that for every evidence-based argument for one of Darwin's two key propositions, there is an evidence-based counter-argument.
Well, but is it a debate? I mean, there's just you and a couple of other guys in a dinky little office downtown, say, on one side, and there's the faculties of all the great universities of the world on the other side.
Speaking with a great uniform and authoritative voice.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in any case, the debate really isn't going to be settled by numbers. It's going to be settled by the evidence and the arguments.
While I was still in Bill Gates country, Dr. Meyer recommended I check in with molecular biologist Jonathan Wells.
What kind of names do they call you?
Creationist.
What do you say back to them when they say you're a creationist?
Well, I usually don't get the opportunity.
What's at stake for you personally here?
First of all, I love science. I think the way Darwinism corrupts the evidence, distorts the evidence, is bad for science.
Well, the other scientists would tell you to just shut up if you love science, okay? Because you're sort of being a bomb thrower into science.
I am upsetting the apple cart, and I think it deserves to be upset in this case.
Why?
Because the evidence is being distorted to prop up a theory that I think doesn't fit it.
Was Darwinism really that bad? Perhaps a change of scenery would give me a fresh perspective.
Quand je t'ai vu au coin de la rue, tout désuété, j'ai cru que tous les deux, sous le ciel bleu, nous serions très heureux.
Mr. Berlinski, I assume? How are you, sir? So where are you from originally?
I was born in New York.
Yes.
Spent 31 years in Manhattan.
Yes.
And I spent a lot of time in California, too.
And tell me all the various universities where you studied or taught.
No, I was at Princeton, and I had a professorship at Stanford, and then I left Stanford, and I taught at Rutgers. I left Rutgers, and I taught at the City College in New York. I left the City College of New York. I taught at the Baruch College. I taught at San Jose.
What did you teach at Baruch College?
Anything they wanted. Come on in.
Thank you, monsieur.
What an old building. Wow. It's the oldest in Paris.
You're kidding. Merci, monsieur.
Ah, je vous en prie, monsieur.
Merci. Wow, this is fabulous.
Let's put it this way. Before you can ask, is Darwinian theory correct or not, you have to ask the preliminary question, is it clear enough so that it could be correct? That's a very different question. One of my prevailing doctrines about Darwinian theory is, man, that thing is just a mess. It's like looking into a room full of smoke. Nothing in the theory is precisely, clearly, carefully defined or delineated. It lacks all of the rigor one expects from mathematical physics, and mathematical physics lacks all of the rigor one expects from mathematics. So we're talking about a gradual descent down the level of intelligibility until we reach evolutionary biology. We don't even know what a species is, for heaven's sakes.
So his theory is smoke, but elegant smoke.
There's a certain elegance to it, but, you know, I think Einstein had the appropriate remark. He preferred to leave elegance to his tailor.
A room full of smoke? That certainly wasn't what I was hearing from prominent Darwinists like Richard Dawkins.
Evolution is a fact. It's a fact which is established as securely as essentially any other fact that we have in science.
Richard Dawkins is so confident that evolution is a fact, and that therefore God doesn't exist, that he has devoted his entire life to spreading the evolution gospel.
I'm an atheist with respect to the Judeo-Christian God because there is not a shred of evidence in favor of the Judeo-Christian God. It is completely right to say that since the evidence for evolution is so absolutely, totally overwhelming, nobody who looks at it could possibly doubt that if they were sane and not stupid. So the only remaining possibility is that they're ignorant, and most people who don't believe in evolution are indeed ignorant.
But the people I spoke with weren't ignorant. They were highly credentialed scientists. So there had to be something else going on here.
So you think the whole theory of evolution is false, or just certain parts of it?
Well, again, evolution is a slippery word. I would say minor changes within species happen. But Darwin didn't write a book called How Existing Species Change Over Time. He wrote a book called The Origin of Species. He purported to show how this same process leads to new species, in fact, every species. And the evidence for that grand claim is, in my opinion, almost totally lacking.
How does Darwin or Darwinism say life began?
Well, he didn't know, and in fact, nobody knows. So Darwinism, strictly defined, starts after the origin of life and deals only with living things.
Well, how can there be a theory about life without a theory about how life began?
Well, a grand overarching evolutionary story, of course, does include the origin of life, but Darwin's theory doesn't begin until you have the first cell.
Well, does someone have a theory about how life began?